This is an introduction to part 4 of the book Equip, entitled Law and Grace. God's law and His grace are two parts of the same truth that should never be separated. They are held together in tension and together give strength to the whole structure of God's kingdom. When I was younger, I used to think that freedom was to be released from all restraint. No one was going to tell me what I should do or what I should think. But later in life, and after I began to become a disciple of Jesus, I realized that true freedom is really coming under the lawful rule of a lawful king. God is lawful by nature, and everything He creates is touched by His lawfulness. We know that the universe we live in always and everywhere has some kind of order built into it. Everything we discover in nature is ruled by law of some kind. The world we live in is almost infinitely complicated, but what we do understand about it is lawful. Our world is governed by all kinds of rules. Music is lawful. There are a multitude of rules that govern the way we play and understand and create music. Sports are based on rules. Sports is lawful. Medicine is lawful. Business follows laws. Governments should be lawful. Good civil laws protect society from crime and injustice. They give structure to our institutions and delegate authority to citizens who live lawfully. Good laws create a better place to live and do business. Nations that respect and uphold the rule of law become prosperous nations where there is investment and many more growing businesses. Science pursues human understanding of the laws of nature. Science produces technology through mastering some of the laws of nature. Good laws protect our freedoms, our investment, and our families. Laws in society are meant to enshrine the values, which really are the roots of our culture. So the Bible contains God's moral and spiritual laws that pertain to eternal life. When it comes to God's laws in the Bible, it's helpful to think of a highway with two ditches on either side of it. The highway is called lawfulness, and we should try to stay on that highway and avoid the ditch on one side that is called lawlessness. Lawlessness is the casting off of God's lawful rule in the name of freedom from all restraint. The ditch on the other side of God's highway is called legalism. That is the error of making God's laws or any system of religious rules take the place of God Himself. In God's kingdom, the highest law is His law of love. Love is about caring for others and treating them with mercy and compassion. And of course, there's no real love without justice. Here's what happened in Matthew chapter 22. Take a look in verse 36. Someone asked Jesus, "Teacher, what is the great commandment in the law?" And He said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind." Jesus was quoting from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And here, Jesus was quoting from Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. Then Jesus went on to say, on these two commandments depends the whole law and the prophets. Jesus said that truth will set us free, but true freedom is not independence from restraint, but it's rather having God's protection and the authority in His lawful rule to fulfill His purposes in our lives. God's lawfulness leads us to liberty. Here's what the New Testament writer James wrote, James chapter 1, verse 25. But the one who looks intently at the perfect law, the law of liberty and abides by it, not becoming a forgetful hearer, but an effectual doer, this man will be blessed in what he does. This is a law of liberty, and this law of God was meant to be internalized. It was meant to be written on the tablets of our own hearts, deep in our subconscious. Here's what the prophet Jeremiah wrote, Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 33. But this is the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Verse 34, they will not teach again each man his neighbor, and each man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more. In this section of Equip, we learn the principle for interpreting the whole of God's law. That is, that the letter of God's law will kill you through legalism, condemnation, and guilt, but the spirit of the law will set you free. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6 says, who also made us adequate as servants of a new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. The spirit of the law is God's original intention and his purpose for giving the law. And two men in the Bible help us understand the spirit of God's law. These two are Jesus and Paul. Paul the Apostle was a Pharisee of the Pharisees. He knew and practiced the most rigorous religious laws of his day. It's Paul that teaches us that the spirit of God's law is the reason he's giving us his command. We're not slaves. We're not little children who are expected not to question, but to obey the Father's instructions immediately. A mature son and a mature daughter, on the other hand, are the ones who ask of the Father, why? So when we receive a command from God, we say, why are you commanding this? This is because mature children are heirs and one day will rule in God's house. It's required of mature disciples to know why God is giving his commands. And this question leads us to the spirit of God's law. Jesus demonstrated the spirit of God's law 24/7. He walked in the spirit of God's law because it was Jesus with the Father who gave the biblical laws to Moses on Sinai. And Jesus, when he walked this earth, he never broke even one of God's laws. He always walked 100% in the spirit of the law. As the Son of God, he embodied, he fulfilled, he perfected God's law. And we should live as he did, in the Spirit of God. God's kingdom's rule means walking in the light, understanding the spirit of God's laws all the time and everywhere. Here's what the psalmist wrote about knowing the laws of God and embracing them. He wrote, the law of the Lord is perfect, restoring the soul. And he also sang in Psalm 119, oh, how I love your law. Let's look at what has been called the businessman's psalm. These are the first 3 verses of Psalm number 1. How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. Verse 2, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. Verse 3, and he will be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, its leaf does not wither, and in whatever he does, he prospers.